like we, for whatever reason, are a society that likes to treat the symptoms. Like we just want the symptoms to go away and not look at the root causes of things. And I think that's what it's going to take, is just that shift in mindset of treating the cause and not the symptom.
Right.
And because it's like, because if you're like, if you can get the symptoms to go away, then you can't see it, right?
Right.
Gets buried, so we don't have to worry about the rest of it.
Or we have Band-Aid solutions where it looks like things are changing or happening for the better, and they're not.
I'm Sharmon.
I'm Katie.
And this is Unpacking Ethical,
a podcast where we sip our favorite drinks at the moment
and talk about some things.
Because there's nothing ethical about upholding the status quo.
Let's talk about it.
This week on Unpacking Ethical,
we're here for our last episode of the season.
Yep.
Yeah. And since you already picked up your mug, what you drinking, Katie?
I've got some peppermint tea with a splash of ginger, and it is the perfect drink for the type of morning I'm having. My voice is a little hoarse. What you got? What are you drinking?
I have a little smorgasbord. That's my new word. I've just decided. So I ran out of lemons this morning, and I normally do hot water and lemon in the morning, but I just used the last of my apple cider vinegar and some honey, and then I poured in a little packet of my ginseng too. So we got all kinds of stuff hanging out in this cup.
You concocted something real special.
I don't know what it is.
Does it taste good?
It does. It does taste good. So I'm like, hey.
I like apple cider vinegar when I run out of lemon too. Like I'll do, that apple cider vinegar cayenne honey thing that I make. I told you I put cayenne in everything. I gotta stop. It's getting out of control.
Is it bad? Because I put hot sauce on everything, or chili peppers.
It's not bad, but it just doesn't need to be on every single thing. But I'm convinced that it does. Like last night, there was a drink that Zach had, and it had like something around the edges, and I'm like, "Oh, is that cayenne pepper?" He's like, "I don't think that's cayenne pepper." And I have such excitement about it. I don't know what that's about. So, but your drink sounds lovely.
Does it? I'm like it's doing what it needs to do this morning. So.
It's early, y'all. We are here to unpack all of this season, right?
Yeah.
Well,
unpacking season 2.
Unpacking season 2. I don't know where you want to start. Where do you want to start, Sharmon?
Where I want to start is not with season 2. So I'm look, let me tell you. Okay, so when we were doing our planning for this, we had all these topics that we thought about discussing that we were going to try to bring in people. And one of the things we thought about was talking about like nuance within sustainability and how, and I had kind of let it go because it had been based really off of like a conversation that I'd had in a different group that I was hesitant to talk about because it was basically not, I don't know how to say curated or hosted, I guess curated maybe, or talked about by 2 women of color. And we, amongst several white people and white women. And I was like, I did not want to like call them out in front of that group of people. And I didn't want to like say anything about it in that group of people because we were talking about nuance. And I thoroughly believe like everything is nuance.
Oh, absolutely.
It came up again on Twitter this weekend. And where it was Aja had like posted something about I don't even remember. Basically, again, people using poor people as an excuse to like maintain this fast fashion model. Because like, what are poor people going to be able to afford kind of thing without like looking at the larger system. And I had like mentioned that I had been in this talk with some, like sustainability experts that were basically saying that fast fashion wasn't necessarily all bad thing because it helped close like the class divide. And I was just like, but for who? Like,
right.
like, because it's not closing the class divide for the people that are like making the clothes or those that are like living downstream from where all the waterways are polluted. Like, it's not helping them at all. So are we just talking about us? And I think it got me thinking a lot about our very Western centric view of sustainability and how we only look at like what's happening here and, you know, with us in our own neighborhood. And I'm like, there's like an entire world out there that this affects. And I think I went into like, I'm like, if COVID showed us anything, it's like this world is tiny, and what happens in one part of the world is gonna affect like the rest of the world. And that, you know,
Right.
like we can't like continue to ignore like the people on this side just because all of a sudden like you're able to buy, you know, 50 million more things, when in reality, like poor people are not sustaining these fast fashion brands. It's not them buying like, you know, at max like maybe 5 pieces a year that's sustaining this. So I'm like, it's people spending hundreds of dollars. So that was my little rant for the day because it came up on Twitter.
Well, it makes me think about how much of, I mean, if I'm being honest, these days I'm not feeling super hopeful and optimistic about humanity. But I still have hope. So as long as there's still that, I'm good. But I just am saying, hope. Sorry. Yeah. I I am seeing, you know, a lot of just, there was a very big shift. You know, things are always changing and evolving or having, there's the illusion of progress, I say sometimes. Now that I understand what that means more. But I feel like there was a huge shift, and I don't know how it happened. Well, I do know how some ways that it happened, but I just feel that people are generally right now in a very bad space. And so when you were talking about like how what we do affects somebody else, and how we live such individualized lives now that it's almost becoming impossible to get people, I feel, not everyone, but again, nuance, to get most people to be able to think and feel beyond their own circumstances. And that is not a good place to be in. And I see that a lot, and it makes me sad. I mean, we all are guilty of it. And the corporations and all the people that not the people, but the entities that we discuss all the time that are the worst for our society, they always are going to benefit some kind of way. Absolutely. And they absolutely benefit on us leading these individualized lives in so many ways. Community is not something that they want us to have. And we talked about this. I think we covered this a little bit with Jordan, where we were talking about like what community is, and, you know, how within actual community, we got each other, we support each other. It's like, hey, I'm out of sugar, can I borrow some sugar? Or I'm out of whatever, you know, can I borrow this? And that we don't really live in communities like that anymore. I don't even know if they exist, because I haven't lived in a community like that in a long time. There's the virtual sort of communities, and that are in this, you know, on the apps and Instagram. And as much as I'm not a fan of Instagram these days, I do understand it is still a certain gathering place for people. But it's such a low vibrational space right now that it makes it hard to even want to get on there. And if it makes it hard for you to even want to get on there, then how are you engaging with the people that you want to be in community with? It's just a lot. So I don't know, I just think about, how do we get people back to a place where they can feel like either they have the energy or the capacity to care for themselves, but also to extend that care and compassion to people outside of their family and just their, like, you know, small, you know, main group or whatever. It's a big question that I've been thinking about. Do you have the answer, Sharmon?
I do not have an answer. I do not. I think you're completely right. And I especially I think within, I guess all I can speak for is like American culture. And
Right.
you kind of mentioned that in another one of our podcasts. A lot of this stuff is just by design. And it's all about, kind of, people say follow the money, but I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it is, yes, following the money, but also it's just like following the benefits, like who is benefiting from this? Because yes, at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to money, but I think it's more about power and control. And money is just a means of doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. I've been thinking about that too. It's funny that you said that. I love that you said that. Yeah.
So I'm like, it's definitely just like following the benefits for me, like following who benefits from that. Because I think even as we talk about fast fashion or just producing, not even fashion, we do this in every area of our lives where some things are massively produced, and the numbers, and I think a lot of people are like, hey, well, that's the system, that it rewards people who produce more. And I'm like, I don't know that it's meant to reward the people that produce more. I think it's specifically meant to keep smaller makers out.
Oh, absolutely.
And unable to produce things at a cost that's beneficial to everybody, really.
I agree. And I'm thinking about the prices of things, and it's not that I don't accept that there are shortages, that these are the things that naturally will happen when you what's the word I want to use? Extract and extract and extract. When you have these sorts of practices that just take and take and take, then you do see what is happening. But there's also the problem of hoarding, and the people who have power, they hoard, and then they make us compete for the most basic resources. And so if we didn't even need to have if we never even arrived to having a conversation about ethics in fashion or ethics in any other way of life here in the Western part of the world, like you said, I can only speak for here, and particularly America, you would look and see, like, why do I have to pay for water? I need water to survive. Everything needs water. Why am I having to pay for clean, not just to have access to it, but to then have access to water that's not poison? Like, it's unheard of. And it should not even be, this shouldn't even be an issue. And so, but not to be bringing everybody down, because
but I kind of want to like not go back to that, but like follow with that, because I know you were saying you kind of like losing your faith in humanity a little bit, but it kind of reminded me of a TikTok or like a video reel, whatever platform you're on, that Tavi, one of our other guests that you guys would have seen right before this episode, like one of her videos was kind of talking about, because people were saying they didn't believe that people were like inherently bad, but it was just like the systems and stuff that we evolved. And she made a really good point, that she was like, yeah, it's the systems, but she's like, but who created the systems?
Right.
Like, she said we created this, but like we as in just humans in general, not necessarily
right.
But she's like, we created the system, so like, so who is? And I'm like, oh, yeah.
There are some inherently bad people in this world. There are, and I don't know if why. I think when if you look at the people who like the people, when we talk about bad, good, bad, that's even more nuanced that we could spend all day talking about. But if you look at like the average person who does something that is not the brightest, the best reflection of the best parts of ourselves, but then you look at the people who constantly benefit off of the way things kind of operate, they are the bad people. They have the power to do things, and they don't. And instead they keep a cycle going that is unhealthy for everybody, for over 90% of the population,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so there are unfortunately inherently bad people. And I think what does give me hope is, is knowing like that we can still have a conversation like this.
Right.
That, that we haven't gotten completely burnt out on talking about and continuing to exchange ideas and figuring out like, this is I guess this is a form of community too, like talking with each other and expressing ideas and opinions and views and exchanging them, and then thinking about them, and then thinking about how we moving forward and how we support each other. And I think, that that's got to be where it is. And then of course with the kids, like when I look at the kids, sometimes I think, okay, man, y'all think y'all gonna figure it out for us? Because I don't think we need you. We need you to do this. And I just appreciate when I've seen, and this, I think that's why I'll ask you too, since we're going to get into more of the episodes, but the parenting obviously was one of my favorites. The parenting with Tony, because I enjoy exploring and having conversations about our relationships with young children so much, because I just never had these perspectives before I became a parent. And so it's like, for me, it's like I'm growing and learning. And it's exciting to me because I think not just because of what they can bring to the world only, but there's just so much, when we talk about the best of humanity, it's in them. It's in the kids before it gets programmed out of them. I don't know. But I see it like even with, with just things that when you and I were growing up, we did not have, at least I can't speak, I'm going to just generally say that we didn't have conversations about what gender identity was, what sexuality was, how they're different, like what that means, what it means to be gender. We weren't having those conversations, and those are front and center conversations a lot now. And when I'm talking to, and I'm having to unlearn and unpack a lot myself, like to be where I am in life and at this age and the living that I've done, it's unrealistic for me to say I don't have unpacking to do. We have to be, even as a Black person, I have to actively unlearn anti-Blackness. And it is something that I have to do every day. Things that were, ingrained in us that we no longer want to cling to. So with kids, I'm talking to Castle about, we had a book. What was the book called? It was a book we picked up at the library, and it was about gender identity and various inabilities that people might have, or, and just making space for all types of people. And to him, it's like a no-brainer.
Right.
It's just, when you talk to children about these things, it's just like, oh yeah, okay. It's easier to talk to my 7-year-old about these things than it is to, an older cousin or somebody, because they just like, I'm not accepting it, because they cling. Yeah, they're, what do you call it? Like they're in it. So that's the hope has to be there. But I enjoyed the parenting podcast so much, and you remember when Tony said, I don't want to misquote. Maybe you'll remember.
Ooh, like I just edited this episode.
I think she said something like she always wanted, she didn't necessarily want to have babies. She just wanted to raise people.
Yes. I feel like, is that our opening thing? That's our opening.
That's our opening quote. That's such an amazing, I've not heard someone put it like that before.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that perspective so much. And I've been thinking about it since, how I show up. And so let's switch gears here. Did you have a favorite?
Yeah, it's so funny because I was like totally going to ask you what your thing was, and then you just went into it. I feel like there was so many like good moments or just good things said throughout. I know my favorite, of course, episode was with Tavi and Becky, which I have not edited yet. So I don't know what that's going to turn out like. Because I know like after I messaged you, I was like, it was just an hour and a half of pure chaos.
And laughter.
Yeah. But I think I just enjoyed it, because like there was still that part of me was like, okay, we have to like have your little producer hat on, and I'm like, okay, I gotta like rein this in somehow. But then we would get like started talking on something that was serious, and I'm like, I just felt like the mood come down, and I was like, don't like this. Wild again. So
Yeah.
like, okay.
I mean, I've seen some of it, and I think it just was it, but doesn't it need to be fun sometimes, you know?
Yes.
I think that's good.
That's good. Because I was trying to like, but then again, y'all, PSA, do not drink in podcasts. You're trying to talk about, because I have like a list of topics in our head that we need to like go through, and I'm like, I can't remember a single one. I'm like, and I'm like looking, I'm like on my computer, I'm like, where's my list? I don't know what I'm supposed to be talking about. I don't know.
So there's a whole lot of rambling, and Sharmon has a whole lot of editing that she has to do, or she had to do to get to at this point, because y'all have seen it already. So but that was your favorite, you think, because of all the laughter
I think it was just a really fun episode. I love those two so much though. But I also, gosh, I like, there's so much. I also really love just spending time with Jordan. It was just, and actually they were like back to back. Those were the two that were back to back, right?
Yes, in the same days.
Yeah. So I'm like, it was really nice to kind of like wake up, I guess, with Jordan and just have that easy. And I'm like, her presence is just so soothing and easy.
It is, absolutely.
Like,
I loved it too, because that was that morning, if you remember, that I discovered my car was towed, and so I wasn't able to be present for Tavi and Becky's episode because I had to go get my car from the tow place, which was annoying. So talking to Jordan that morning was very helpful. It was the exact way I would want to start my day any day, but especially on a day like that where it's so easy to just spiral down into some darkness and just dwell in a negative space for the rest of the day, which I don't like to do, but it's very easy for me to do that. But Jordan, that was a real good episode too. Yeah, all of them were good, because we had foraging.
I'm like, I love that the foraging one is out in the world, and I've been like trying to pull clips, but it was a really good season, y'all. I hope you enjoyed it. Did everybody else? We had fun.
We had fun. It felt, the first season, it was new for both of us to be co-hosting a podcast, right? And so, but talking to each other wasn't new. So we had that part kind of figured out, but then how we would do everything else, kind of, we had to figure it out. And Sharmon, you did a lot of good work, kind of, really bringing the whole thing together. And this season, I feel like we had one meeting about what we wanted to go over, and then life happened, but somehow we were able to come back together, and it really didn't feel, even with like the outside stuff of like, you do more of the technical stuff of making sure the episodes are edited and the graphics and all of that, but it just, the podcast, the recordings themselves have felt very effortless, and like we just show up and we have a conversation about what we're going to have a conversation about. Y'all will be surprised to know, or maybe you won't be surprised, I don't know, I think we're pretty great, but y'all will be surprised to know that we really don't even have a pre-conversation about what we're going to talk about. We kind of like invite our guests, kind of let them know, what we're interested in, that we want to have a conversation with them about, and we just let it happen. And I feel like those are the best kinds of conversations, even if there's dead space sometimes, we edit that part out, but
y'all don't hear the dead space. But I'm like, I think that's a huge part of what we're doing, and just kind of the purpose of our podcast, with just that unpacking. We talk about what we talk about and what comes up, and I don't know, that's just one of the best parts, because we have like areas that we want to touch on, but then somebody will say something, you're like, oh wait, let's talk about that, because there's so much, like there's so much nuance, there's so much to unpack, there's, so much, like you said, we have to unlearn and, you know, try to understand about ourselves and the world around us, and how that's working. And I think it's important work, and I think it's something we should all be doing. And, and then work that not enough of us are. Because I feel like as I get to this point, you were talking about talking to kids is easier than talking to like an older cousin. I'm like, I feel like I am fighting with relatives constantly, or like people that I've been close to, especially, having grown up in the church.
Right.
And still like very active in my faith. And that's just a huge part of me. But at the same time, I think I've always seen things differently, but I have not allowed myself to like venture, necessarily into those spaces. But I do it more, and it's always especially been hard, I guess, with my parents, because I've never been a people pleaser, but I've always been a parent pleaser. And so now having these conversations with my parents is especially tough for me, because they get upset and they're like, what are you talking about? We didn't raise you this way. I'm like, but you did.
Right.
You did raise me this way. Like, it's even funny, I think, like with my mom, and she was like telling me, this is probably years ago. She's like, Sharmon, you're just, you're too independent. You're like, how are you supposed to get married when you're just so independent, kind of thing. And I'm like, have you met Doris Lebby though? Like, have you met yourself?
Right.
Because we were a military family, and we were constantly going, and my dad was working shift work all the time. And she was like our person. She was the one that was always there. She was the one that's maintained. She's the one that did everything. She was the one that would like sit us in the car when we moved to a new place, and we went to go get lost, and we like drive around just kind of learning our new environment. And when we were overseas, she's meeting all these like, local people and getting us, entrenched in their culture. And I'm like, woman, do you know who you are? Like, this is the woman that I grew up seeing. Of course, I'm going to be super independent and learn how to do things by myself because you did it.
Right.
So
you think they're going to hear this episode?
Of course. But it's nothing I haven't already said to her anyway.
No, because I got some things I want to say, and I'm like, maybe I just won't send them this link. Well, but the thing is like, that's what unpacking is being able to have these truth, like come to terms with these different truths. Do you get really uncomfortable when you have to have certain, when you, like if your parents say something that you have unpacked that you just, I can't accept this? Do you feel very uncomfortable? You end the conversation early? Like, how do you handle those times?
I think really it just kind of depends on what I feel I have the capacity for that day, which kind of bothers me a little bit, because I feel like I'm in this position of privilege in some aspects. There's only so much privilege as a Black woman we have, but I am like a heterosexual Black woman, and one without like visible except for the fact that I can barely see, but without visible disability, you know what I mean? So I have these aspects of privilege, and I feel like in that way it's my responsibility to then advocate for these other things that I don't, where whether it comes to like homophobia or transphobia or any different aspects in that way. I'm advocating for these people with the people that are in my lives that are expressing these different things. And so I and sometimes I can get a little uncomfortable but mainly the thing is, like, it takes me a long time to process things. And so I don't always like catch what's making me feel like something's not right in the situation, like right away, and to a point where I can just like address it right then. Because I don't necessarily feel like I have the words to express what I'm feeling all the time. And it's, so again, like, I guess I don't necessarily know how I go about that conversation. It kind of just depends on the moment and the time. And,
I think I feel the same as you feel, like, about a couple of things. I have the opposite, where I process things super quickly, but I react super quickly too. And so I have to now slow down and say, okay, I know how this, because I feel things in my body before I even think about them.
Right.
And I'm learning to listen to my body more, or getting reconnected with that, even though there's trauma can live in the body and there's healing that has to take place in the body so that you're not reacting or just having this
Right.
like really negative response to things because of a trigger. But I do react. And so when these situations, I have to like really process, and like it's something about things in real time. You got to kind of let it play out to see what it actually is and what you actually do need to address it and why. But I feel like I have an incredible responsibility, because we both stand on the same side of this thing together, where we feel we have a responsibility to always do our part to make space for people who don't have the privileges that we have.
Right.
The people who are most impacted by the conditions that we talk about, who are even more impacted.
Right.
And so, as you said, being like a straight, or hetero woman, it's just, it's not okay for me to listen to homophobia and transphobia. And that feels wrong
Right.
to do that. And so, I don't want to be I feel like we can be complicit in things, and I don't want to
Right.
be more complicit. So I'm actively going to do something about it. But it is difficult to like address those things. But then also we live in a time where so much it comes up all the time. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I also think it's important for us to sit with things that are coming up and really feel how we feel about them, where we are with them. That's okay too. I think a lot, I think a lot, and I talk about abolition a lot because I understand why it's necessary. It's just there's so much space between where we are and there that it feels unreachable, but that doesn't mean we can't work toward it. But I remember when I was with Texas Organizing Project, back in the day, it was everything before 2020 feels like back in the day. But they were kind of having conversations about locally criminal and statewide criminal reform and bailouts and court appointed attorneys and how their caseload, and like addressing things that were just trickling down in a very bad way. And abolition came up quite a bit because a lot of people in that space are like, reform doesn't really do enough of what we need it to do. And so I remember the amount of people who were triggered about or by the conversation around abolition because they had been abused or harmed, and the thought of the person that did that to them not paying for it just ate them up. And so there was like that was a real sticky night, because it was like, I can say that I want to like put all my energy into this, but I'm not somebody who has, there was one person, like this guy had abused her physically, and you know how it is, like there was many domestic issues, and the police would come out, he wouldn't get arrested, they gaslight her, and so on and so forth. And finally, he did something really bad to her. He ended up in jail, and she doesn't want him out of jail, and that's understandable. I don't know how to even have the conversation with someone like that, because I don't want to ever seem insensitive. Miriam Kaba talks about like being a survivor of some sort of harm, physical or any other type of harm, and she does make space for that, because I think people think, well, those are bad people, they shouldn't be out, or people who hurt children, but that's not, from my understanding, what I think abolition is about. It's not necessarily like nobody should ever have to pay for anything. It's about coming to terms with, or having these more like one-on-one sort of like, not dialogue, but just kind of one-on-one, like ways of dealing with a specific event that's happening, and not this one size fits all approach to
Right.
something. And so if there's a certain type of harm that's been done, let's talk about it. Let's figure out what needs to happen here, and how it can serve both the person that's been harmed and how we can help the person that caused this.
Right.
Like it, why is that, not the way? And I think it's just, I definitely don't think we're in the best position right now for abolition, because people have gotten more, things are just so much more polarized, and people are so much more like, no, and so it's hard. But I think abolition is necessary because it is the only way that we can then work outside of the systems that have been keeping us trapped in
Right.
this really negative cycle for a very long time.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is like we, for whatever reason, are a society that likes to treat the symptoms. Like we just want the symptoms to go away and not look at the root causes of things. And I think that's what it's
Exactly.
going to take, is just that shift in mindset of treating the cause and not the symptom.
Right.
And because it's like, because if you're like, if you can get the symptoms to go away, then you can't see it, right? It
Right.
all gets
Right.
buried. So we don't have to worry
Yeah.
about the rest of it.
Or we have band-aid solutions where it looks like
Mhm.
things are changing or happening for the better, and they're not. I
Yeah.
remember when Erica Badu, people got really mad at her, and it was very insensitive, and I didn't agree with it either. But when she, after the R. Kelly situation, she made a statement like, I don't want to misquote, but it was something along the lines of like, when the abused becomes the abuser, or something.
Mm.
Like she
Mhm.
was showing compassion toward. And those are the times where you got to sit with, okay, now who's going to benefit from this, and what you're about to say, who's going to be
Mhm.
harmed further from what you're about to say, because
Right.
these allegations had been going on for years, and they really only hit the mainstream media in recent years, but this was going on
Because it
when
was
I
a
was a kid.
documentary.
Exactly. Like this had been going on. I didn't watch the documentary, but the families of these young women had been, I guess, dealing with this for a very long
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah.
so, and people were being silenced. And so
Mhm.
when there's that power dynamic issue, right? When you have a situation like that where you've got, obviously under patriarchy and misogyny, this person being able to escape accountability for what they've done because of those things, because of the
Mhm.
systems of patriarchy and misogyny. And then you have someone who, in the one small space that they want to open up to make a comment or a statement with a big platform, they show compassion only to the abuser, or seemingly that's the optics of it anyway, and that's how people are going to
Right.
take it.
Right.
That just isn't the best thing. She's not wrong, though. That's the problem. Is it's not
Mhm.
wrong, but it's just like, how are you moving through that,
Right.
and who does that benefit, and who does that serve? And so I think, as annoying as it is when these things happen, they do force dialogue. And well, not with some people, because I don't think she acknowledged. I don't know what came after that. People just started labeling her a rape apologist. I don't I don't like those terms. Even though it feels that way, it did feel
It
that
is.
way,
It's a yeah.
and it does feel that way. And she was absolutely, I don't know if wrong is the right word. It just was not, it it was not helping the people who we needed to be making space for,
Right. Right.
when she did that. So, but having these conversations, I think we got to have them. And I think sometimes we'll find ourselves in sticky situations, but if we can always bring to that the compassion and the space for, like you said, more than one thing being true,
Mhm.
and then also being able to find balance in who do we need to be supporting right now, and how do we make space for them, and who needs to be accountable, who needs to be held accountable, and how do we make that happen? Like, it
Yeah.
just needs to be, it cannot be a one size fits all
Yes.
approach ever for something like
Yeah.
this. So, or anything really. But I don't know, I would love to talk more about abolition, but I need to read some more, because it's one of them things we got to unpack a lot before we can
Yes.
even make space for all the possibilities within abolition.
No, agree. So I guess thinking about everything that we've talked about today and everything throughout this whole season, what is it that you think you want to leave people with like the most?
I think maybe I like this quote by Miriam Kaba that hope is a discipline.
Okay, I need to I don't know who this person is.
I've
Katie?
told you about her like 5
Have you?
times. Yes, and don't you
I
edit
think
this
you
part
keep
out. I
bringing up,
want
maybe you
everybody.
bring up the name and I'm just like, I don't know who that is. Okay.
Okay, so she has I learned about Miriam Kaba in 2020. She is a Black woman abolitionist and she's been doing it for a very long time. She wrote an article that was in the New York Times that I read in 2020, and I think the title is "Yes, We Mean Defund the Police." And so I read that article, and the way she talks about abolition, I've never seen anybody talk about it in the way. I'm sure there are other people. I'm just completely like focused on her and her work. But she has a book called "We Do This Till We Free Us" that I've been reading for the past almost 2 years. I pick it up, I read a essay or a conversation, because it's really just a collection of essays or interviews that she's done with different people, or where she's written about things, or someone interviewed her. And it's very, very concise, and it's, I don't know how to explain it, but it's separated in a way to where you can focus on abolition in certain spaces. What does it look like in certain circumstances? Right. What does it look like on a big picture, and what does it look like smaller scale? Like, it's a really good comprehensive book. And so, but I just appreciate her views on abolition. They feel very real. Not that it shouldn't feel realistic, but the way she talks about it, it feels like it's reachable. So yes, Miriam Kaba, Mariamekaba. So but she has that quote, "Hope is a discipline," and that's one of my favorite quotes of all time. I cling to that pretty often. It's something that we have to nurture, we have to work at, and keep it alive, and it's a thing. So that's what I want to leave people with.
Okay, let me swallow my stuff. And I'm like, for me, I feel like it's important to stay open. I think is what I want to leave people with, is just to stay open, keep learning, keep reading. I was talking with a friend of mine, one of the business members for the Ethical Network, and we were kind of talking about people's mindsets in this space. And we have a question, like when they become a member, like on a scale of like 1 to 5, how much do you feel that about sustainability, with 1 being I don't really know anything, and 5 being like I'm an expert. And I'm like, I think I struggle with people who will say like 5, I'm an expert, and then have like these little things like happening with what they're doing or whatever.
Right.
And I'm like, I think I put that I was like a 5, but I also hesitate to say that I'm an expert, just because I'm constantly learning and I'm constantly changing and evolving like my thoughts. Absolutely. And I think that's so important, because I go to different events and I listen to people talk, and I'm like, okay, you're like stating quotes and stats that have been disproven, that that are no longer true. I'm like, we come into this space and we tell everybody to like, watch the true cost when it comes to like fashion. But I'm like, there's so many things in there that we're like, need to throw out, and so many and like, I remember even when I first saw it, I had so many questions like coming out of it. And so many things that don't get discussed. And like, again, it's that nuance again. So I'm like, just stay open, keep learning, keep seeking like knowledge, keep reading everything. I think there's so many sides to this that we have to look at. I don't know. I feel like staying open will keep you from not necessarily judging people. I guess it's not really the word. Maybe that is the word I want to use. but I think are just thinking harshly on people who don't necessarily hold all the same values as you do. But recognizing, within their space, they're still doing something.
Yeah.
And so, I think, I guess maybe still judging is still, maybe that's the word. I feel like it should be something else, but maybe that's the word.
No, I think that's really good. I think people should stay open. I think it's really hard to stay open, but we got to, and I think it's necessary for growth and evolution. I would say stay soft, but that's hard. I like that word. So yeah, I think that's a good place to end. I think those two things are what we've tried to do this entire season with our guests and with each other. And yeah, it was a great season.
It was great. What do you have coming up, Katie? Do you have anything coming up that we should know about?
So I'm at a crossroads with ESJ trying to figure out, but the one thing I'm certain of is that there's going to be another print issue, issue 8 on legacy. I'm very excited about that. Everything else between now and then is just kind of like, we'll see what happens. I don't know if I'm forgetting something. I have a couple of like projects that aren't like public knowledge that are kind of like in the works, have been presented to me, but I don't think I should talk about them publicly. But issue 8, I'm very excited to dive into legacy with all of the people that I'm going to feature. So yeah, that's it. What about you? And
I am in a period of transition. So I don't know. I'm like, just keep following us, I guess, on social media, the Ethical Network. We're going through a period of transition there, trying to see, what's happening, what comes of that. So many amazing things have been happening this year. And I'm job hunting, y'all. So you come across anything.
But you need to be specific. You are looking for jobs, but you're also looking for a certain city. So name it.
Well, I guess too. I'm looking to move to Boston, but I have been mostly looking for like remote positions.
That's
because I want to be able to like go, because I feel like that's been like one thing that's been missing in my life, is just not being able to go. I need to get up and move. So
you got to move. Yeah, you'll be able to do that. We're going to speak it into existence now.
It's happening. It's happening right now.
Great things are coming. Even though I said I don't have hope in humanity, or much hope. I got a little bit still, but hope is a discipline.
Hey y'all, thanks for listening and or watching. Unpacking Ethical is an independent video podcast hosted by the Ethical Network of San Antonio. Your co-hosts are Sharmon, Lebby, and Katie, and we thank you for tuning in. Please follow us on Instagram and our YouTube channel, and hey, leave a review wherever you're listening.